Yo, if you and your spouse are beefing right now, like y'all just fighting about following God. You know what I'm saying? Like you're like, I don't think we should be doing it this way. Y'all are moving forward, following God, but there's no unity. Like y'all are both doing it different ways, and you don't know if they hearing God the way you're hearing God, and if y'all doing the right thing. This episode is gonna snatch your edges and get you in line, baby. We're gonna get you. We have an interview, and we're gonna get some practical tips about how to get realigned with one another, how to determine if you should keep doing this thing that you believe God asked you to do, or let it go. And you're gonna walk away with so much clarity, so much focus, so much encouragement. So stay tuned, baby. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Marisha.
And I'm Antoine.
And this is the Great Unknown Tour podcast.
The purpose of this podcast is to help create a roadmap for people to step out on faith and embrace their adventure with God.
We have sold all of our things in preparation to travel for 1 year in an RV with our 2 kids, interviewing couples about trusting God in times of uncertainty.
All right, let's get into today's episode. What's up, fam? We're here. It's episode 13, baby. And we got a treat for y'all today. We have our first guest. Technically, it's our second guest because, as y'all know, I think we talked about it before. We recorded an episode and the audio was corrupted. And so this time, we got the good audio here. And it's a good one. It's a good one.
You're in for a treat, for sure.
We got to interview Russell and Selah Fuggett. And they get into, what do they get into, babe?
Entrepreneurship as a family, letting go of expectations, good stuff, navigating sobriety. What else?
I'm just going to just add to it, like in entrepreneurship, the ups and downs with being married, not the like Instagram entrepreneurship of like, yeah, I just started a business, I got a Lambo, but like, nah, like what I hear from most people's entrepreneurship journey of like, we just got a deal for $50,000 and we didn't get another deal for 20 months. That's not an example they use, but they just talked about the real ups and downs of being married, having 2 kids, got the bills. You know, you got your bills, you got, school to pay for, you want to go on the summer trips.
The middle.
Yeah, and just reconciling with like, has God actually called us to this? Because this is a hard season. We're in a tough place. Has God called us to this? And then within that answer, realizing like, okay, well then if God has, we need to change. We need to change some things about our life. We need to shift some of these expectations. So it was just a great conversation to hear, because
so many nuggets.
They're veterans.
So much wisdom. Yeah, I was encouraged for sure. Just them talking about unifying as a couple and how it made them both stronger.
Yeah. So tune into this episode. And let us know what you think. We'll talk to you soon. Hey. All right. Welcome to episode 13 of the Great Unknown Tour podcast. I'm Antoine.
I'm Marisha.
And today is a special day, as you can see. Yay. This is our first time interviewing a couple. And when we get on the tour, they're going to be in person. And some of these are going to be virtual. And so this is our first interview. And it's virtual. And we have Russell and Selah Fuggett.
And you are in for a treat.
Yes. And they are in the DMV, like us.
Yes.
All right. So
represent.
Are you guys originally from the DMV?
Yes. I was born and raised in Hyattsville, Maryland, which is like 5 minutes outside of D.C.
Yeah, I was born in D.C., but grew up between Silver Spring and West Baltimore. So we actually grew up more or less like a few miles apart, really, which is kind of funny in looking back at it now.
My dad and him went to the same elementary school.
Oh, damn.
And her neighbors worked with my mom.
Yep.
But we didn't meet.
We never met.
We didn't meet until years later. But yeah, so it was like there's an eerie connection.
Like direct neighbors hung out with their
Wow.
kids, but never met.
Yeah, I went to
him.
kindergarten with her neighbor, actually. Yeah, I went to kindergarten with her neighbor, and their parents worked with my
Crazy.
mom's office. Yep.
Wow.
That
Small world.
is small world,
Yeah.
crazy connections.
Mhm.
So can we ask how you guys did meet and get married and how long you've been married?
Did we even put this on the record on our podcast? I don't even know how the story. I stalked her down, politely.
Yep. Sure did.
She never said no, so I kept pursuing.
Stalking.
So we met online, and when our first conversation was about
Wait.
which is great. Yep.
Like online, like Facebook online, like
Like
Black
Tinder.
Planet online. Oh, Tinder. Okay.
Tinder. Ready to surrender on Tinder. Yes. So her sister and my cousin separately said y'all should check out
Should check this out.
Tinder. Is this new thing. This is
Okay. Yeah.
This
yeah,
was
yeah.
quite a while
a
ago.
while ago, obviously. And so I was on there. So I guess we both had swiped right. Is it swipe right? I think it was. I wouldn't know.
I don't even know.
Yep.
And so we chatted, but she never really followed up. And then
Because I figured out what Tinder was,
yeah,
and I was no longer interested in anything to do with Tinder.
but she actually used her real name, and her real name is so unique. It made it quite easy
I didn't know I wasn't supposed to.
to find her. So I found her on Instagram. And this is before Instagram, for all you young people, had a DM feature. Like DM, I think, was maybe on Twitter, but there was no chat. So there was this janky app that,
Like a plug-in.
yeah, which was really terrible,
It's horrible.
that I had downloaded, and we were able to communicate a little bit on that. And then we asked her on a date to a football game, and she stood me up.
I was too busy in a suite. That's
And I was in a suite,
in.
but she was afraid she wouldn't be able to get back into her suite because she had snuck into her suite. I actually had the tickets to my suite.
I probably should have went to his suite.
But in hindsight, guy had other plans. So then, so I'm the guy that if I say meet me in 6 months on the dark side of the moon at this time and this date, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
And she had not experienced that. So the second date, I said, hey, meet me here, this restaurant on Friday night. Boom. I don't think I followed up with her for a number of days, maybe even a week.
Or a week.
And then I text her, hey, I'm parking. I'm sorry, I'm a few minutes late. She's like, I'm not
there.
I'm not there.
You don't confirm I'm not doing all of this. This is a lot of work.
And
I'm not doing this.
her father was sick at the time, so she had, gone to visit. She's like, I ain't heard from these flaky guys. I haven't heard from him in days. I'm gonna go tend to my father.
Yeah. So I was sitting in my parents' living room when he said he was parking in Baltimore and I was in Annapolis, which are 45 minutes away from each other. I was like, I'm not there.
So I was mad. Be real.
He unfriended me.
I unfriended her
social media.
on, at least on Instagram. I don't know if we were ever.
I don't know.
Yeah,
The social.
I unfriended. And then I hurt my. I think Labor Day weekend kind of came. This was like in the late summer, and I had hurt my back. I thrown my back out, and I was just laid up on the weekend, just watching like History Channel and like college football, not doing anything. And I decided to refollow, and then I texted her. Actually, no, I called you.
Oh, me.
I called you. I said, hey, look, I'm sorry about the last one. I didn't, check in with you leading up to the date. Can we try it a third time? And so, sure enough, the third one she showed up, and the rest was history.
Yeah. And it was great. And we actually just this Valentine's Day took our girls to the same restaurant and
Same
sat at
table.
the same
Oh.
table
That was our first
and
time.
ordered like some of the same food, and it was great. We loved it. So we like to go there once in a while to remember first date.
So that's
Yes.
it.
And then we've been married how long now?
8 years.
8 years.
Okay.
Yes. And
8
two
years
kids.
as
We
of-
have two girls. We have a 5 and an 8-year-old.
Got you. When was the 8-year anniversary?
February.
February.
Got it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, from Tinder to Instagram, how do I want to ask this? So then, what was it like for you, Selah, when he popped up on Instagram? Like, what's up? I'm the Tinder guy.
Stalker.
I'm the Tinder guy.
Hi. And then he's like, well, who is this girl that uses her real name? He's nicknames. So like it was like a tit for tat. And can I tell you guys also, his picture on Instagram was his 14-year-old passport.
At the time.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't know what
Oh.
look. It was interesting. But I'm glad I didn't.
Honestly, did not make a hat. I think you were the only person that ever like dated or met certainly off of Tinder and off of Instagram. So that picture was just my friends and family.
So they knew him.
Yeah. So anyway.
But it was the best decision. And he'll tell you, he didn't tell you in this story, but I felt like it was such a great first date. I kissed him at the end of it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this man something. I put him through the ringer. Give him a little kiss, make sure he knows that I'm on board now.
We went to a really
Occasion at that point.
nice
It was
restaurant.
a really nice restaurant.
So what made you, what was so exquisite about the date?
It was more him. There was just something about him. Like, I don't even know if I ever told you this, but when I pulled up,
Tell me, put on the restaurant. Document this. Yeah, done. Us.
you were sitting on a bench out in front of Sabatino on like a business call in like a suit. I didn't go out with too many brothers in a suit at that point in my life. Let's just be really honest. So I'm like, that's him? And he on the phone and he in a suit and he's been working. Like I can get down with this. It's like we started like on a good area. I was like, okay. And then the date went well. Oh, and then he knew about the tricks on the food. Like he was like, oh, you got to get the garlic on both sides of the garlic bread. And all this.
Hey, when we went back, didn't they say hi? Good to see you, Mr. Fuggett.
They did. I was like, okay.
That's
So he got me on food, and he's like looking good, and we all know he talks a good game.
home field. I had a little home field advantage. Home field.
So he did a great job,
Oh, that's cool.
and he wasn't intimidated by some guy that was staring at us the entire time, specifically at me, because I have sisters that look exactly like me, and he went to high school with my sister and knows my sister's married. So he kept staring at me like, is that her? Is she on a date? And finally I went up to him like, hi, I'm not the person you think I am. I'm her little sister.
True story.
It was so uncomfortable. I'm like,
Wow.
at us. And I didn't want him to think my sister was doing something.
Right.
So, and I was like, no. No, he was cool about that too.
I can't believe you still had a great attitude after being stood up twice.
Who, Russell?
You know? Yeah.
I did initially, but I guess it was
For
just
sure.
something like that. Our conversations have been so unique, and we talked about faith very early on.
Very early.
That I wanted to at least find out if there was a there. I think that's what
Gotcha.
it was. And after I got over being angry, I had to acknowledge like I didn't engage her between asking her on the date and the actual date. Is expected to show up. I have to, I still learn that lesson sometimes. Some people are.
I'm
need that.
I'm very similar.
Yeah.
Like if I say like, let's do this, like it's already set. Like I'm not
It's
even
on the calendar. Yep.
thinking
I'll
that
be
it
there.
won't happen. So
So
no, that's
So
I've had to
luckily your
learn that
third
lesson
time
too.
was the charm.
Nice.
that's awesome.
I'm glad. I'm so happy for you guys.
So are we.
It's a unique story. Okay.
It is. Thank you.
I'm satisfied. I love hearing those stories because it's just, you never know, like, how people got together, where they met, when they met, what they were thinking, what place in life they were. It was crazy for us. That's why I like asking other people.
Yeah, I was gonna say, thinking of unfollowing people, when we finally got together and had been together, one time she was like, why can't I find you on Instagram? Like, when I go to your page, how come you don't have any posts, and why can't I like your photos? She was like, if I like it, the heart will come up and then it will just disappear. And she was like, what is it? And then she was like, I can't find you on Facebook. Like, did you block me? And I'm like, no, why would I block you? Like, why would I have blocked you, you know? And so we go and look through her stuff, and she had blocked me.
Oh no.
Yeah, she had blocked me. We were friends before we started dating, and she had blocked me.
I didn't want any distractions.
I love it.
All right, so this this podcast, the heart of it is to give people a blueprint to navigate what we call the great unknown, helping people embrace their adventure with God. And the great unknown for us is it's really a place of surrender where we say yes to God asking us to trust him in a way that feels extremely vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. You feel exposed, and you don't know if, like, you've never trusted God in this way. We've never trusted God in this way, and so we're like just laying ourselves in his hand. And however, we've never experienced him in that way. And it takes us back to what 7 years ago when we did a tour that was called the Great Unknown Tour, where we believed that God was asking us to hop in a car. This was a month after we got married. We got, instead of asking for wedding gifts, we asked for people to give us money because we were going to do this tour, and that's what we lived off of for not the whole time, but we knew we would make it a quarter of the way through, and then God would have to do something. And we would pop up in cities for 2 weeks at a time, or more or less, depending on where it is. And I would do free concerts. She would do free dance workshops. And we really just wanted to serve the body. We wanted to see God in creation. And we wanted to experience the body of Christ, like in all the different facets and ways. We went to so many different churches and hung out with so many different communities, and it was a exercise in, I didn't realize at the time, but rejecting or challenging societal norms. It just didn't, if we were at a place where we had this itch inside of us to change and to move forward and to do something differently, but we didn't know what that was. And then God stepped in and said, like, do this. And so we did it, and it changed. I'll speak for me. Everything. It changed everything, because we got to see God in a very different way, got to experience so many things. And ultimately, what we see in the great unknown is that we'll grow closer with God, and he's pulling us close. And we see that so many people are distracted and get distracted by, I guess you could say, the things that, I forget who said it. I don't know if it was Jesus or Paul. Maybe neither. But the pride of life, lust of the eye, lust of the flesh, these trappings that, at least in the U.S., have us idolize comfort, and to the point where we don't even make space to hear from God if it's not within the construct of what people told us life should be like at, whatever age or social status that we are. And we find that a lot of people are bored, but they don't know they're bored. But the way they live is out of boredom, whether it's the buying of random things, or the stress, or the weight gain, all the different, what are those? The different find a word. Not supplements. It's on the tip of my tongue. I don't remember the name. It's like an addiction term, but it's the replacements of our relationship with God.
What did he say?
Replacements?
Yeah, but it's another
Transfer of addiction.
Substitutes, transfer, addiction
maybe
transfer.
substitutes. I don't know. It's not. it's not hitting me, but just we've put other things into place. We've substituted. We do these things as a substitute for
Mhm.
where God is
God.
asking us to go, but
Yep.
we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so even with this tour,
Like there's a void that we're trying to fill,
yeah,
but we don't
Absolutely.
know, like it's too uncomfortable to move outside of our box or the
right,
what we've known or what people say
right,
is the thing
And what
that
we
we're
think we
supposed
can
to be
control.
doing. Right.
right,
And so we just fill it with other stuff, but then it doesn't make us feel any better or feel fulfilled or
yeah,
be fulfilled.
yes,
Not just feel it, but like actually be fulfilled. So
yes,
there's always like a longing and a searching for something else.
right. Because when we were doing the first tour, all the questions had nothing to do actually with God. They were all about self-preservation. They're all about like, what are you going to do next? Or what about, we were like in leadership and ministry. Like, what are you going to do about leadership and ministry? Or like all these things besides like, I don't know, what do you hope God is going to do? Or what do you think he's going to show you? Or it was less about that. And so with this current tour that we're embarking on, we were in the place of comfort and didn't know it, had no idea, and God shook it up, and we didn't know. I didn't know, and so we are here to help people say yes. What would you like to add?
I think you said it all.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we just want to encourage people and help them like find their purpose and what we talk about every week. But if this is your first time, like find their purpose, but also know who they are. Because I think that knowing who you are and whose you are will catapult you into your purpose or like taking that first step. But like if you know what God is calling you to do or your purpose, to just take that first step towards it, and maybe even showing like practical things, practical ways and steps, and just that it's not this terrible, hard life that you have to live in order to follow God or go after your dreams.
Right. And he asked us to do what we're doing now at what I feel like was the worst possible time to do it. And so it was trusting him in the uncertainty, like against my better judgment, which is not what Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, and leaning into that, but also him asking us to expose that, to share the journey vulnerably of like, this is what we're going through, and this is what God has asked us to do. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times,
the first tour we showed Instagram moments, here's us at this place, and then so this time God was like, just show everything. like show everything and go by my leading. And the same as before, we're doing this day by day. So we don't know what tomorrow will hold, and we're trusting him to provide for us and bring everything that we need for tomorrow and enjoy life in it instead of like holding our breath waiting for the final outcome, like the final destination of where God wants to bring us, but just enjoying every moment and every day and the freedom in that.
right? Because it was so easy to share it afterwards, like this. Let me tell you this story and how he
Yeah.
felt in the middle, instead of, I know at least for me, in sharing it in the middle where I cannot control the narrative and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
At the end, like at the end, I can, we can go ahead and share it because it's over. But like in the middle was probably one of my biggest fears, honestly. For sure.
Which is what most people are going through. So with you guys, there's so many things that I know we could talk to you about. You guys could share that would encourage people, help people. Do you want to lead into it? Or
I
did you
can't
want
hear
to
you
say
again.
anything
No,
else
I'm
before
done.
we hear from them?
No,
Okay,
that was a
I'm
great
excited to
transition.
hear from them and let them loose.
I know one thing we no, I think has been a really defining factor of our relationship is my entrepreneurial journey, which I should say really, is our entrepreneurial journey as a married couple. And I make that distinction because I really think it's really been in recent weeks, quite frankly, this calendar year of 2023 that we're just about 4 months into, that I've really had to make some realizations about what that means and what the implications of that have been, for our marriage, and that I've come to some understanding, which has allowed me to create the space for Selah to better communicate to me more openly and honestly and vulnerably what it's meant and how it's impacted her. Um, and I know one realization. There's two I think fundamental things, and I think are important. I'm still unpacking them for myself. And I think the first one is somewhat subtle, and that is, as I've gone through various business ventures, and let me just, I guess, provide some context. I'm a fifth generation African American entrepreneur. My uncle was a guy named Reginald F. Lewis, who was considered the first African American to own $1 billion business. I have, my great grandfather escaped slavery and had his own blacksmith shop in upstate New York and had a U.S. patent in 1888. My great grandfather, my mother's side, owned property. He was one of the first 36 Black attorneys in the state of Maryland. So I have this tremendous history, and I grew up around it. I knew what it looked like. I knew what was possible, but also I had my own story. And before I even understood or knew any of this history, is I was in second grade, and I was in the back of the class selling these like paper toys. My friend was making them, and he was giving them away. And I went to him, I said, "Why are you giving them away? We can sell these. 50 cents, I get a quarter, you get a quarter." He says, "Deal." So I'm in the back of the class conducting commerce, and I had extra money for chips and milk at lunchtime. It was great. I ate well, and parent teacher night came, and my second grade teacher said, "Miss Fuggett, can you please tell your son to stop disrupting my class while I'm trying to give the lesson?" She said, "Sure. What's he doing? I'll correct it." To him and his little buddy in the back selling these paper toy fortune tellers in the back of our class, "Can you please tell him to cut it out?" So I tell people I begin speeches from time to time when I talk to young people with that. I got regulated out of business, my first business at 7 years old in second grade. When I identified a market opportunity, I got regulated. I had to pay attention to class as opposed to being in the back of the class making money for lunch, for extra, chips at lunch. I kind of really grew up with this history. But I think the two things I really had to grapple with is that when I've pursued various ventures to try to, in some ways duplicate my family's success or have my own success to figure things out, I always had believed, people, we were taught to be expectant of God to move. And I think one of the subtle but powerful shifts I'm going through now is I would be in a particular venture, and I would say, okay, God's going to move and make this work this time. And I would pursue that with the expectation of that specificity. Of course, not knowing all the details, but certainly with a very clear idea of what I expected to happen, what I wanted to happen within a certain range, right, of outcomes. But that would all be nonetheless viewed positively by myself, by others, by my wife, by the world. And so that was my expectation. So we begin to, when things don't go that way, you begin to say, okay, why did God not meet my expectations? Now, of course, it's been a growth journey for me, certainly, to say, okay, there's things about me, there's things I did incorrectly, there is at least one venture where I looked at the pandemic hit that I would have probably lost everything if I had done it and succeeded at it, right? So you look at, okay, God kept me, God's been growing me. But I've had to shift that expectation to saying now in this very moment, this very season, as we record tonight, to say, I'm working on some things. I know God's going to do something amazing, but I really don't have an expectation as to what it's going to look like. I really don't. I've let that go. So I just say, okay, God, what have you called me to do and execute on a day-to-day basis without having an expectation, but to know that everything in the Bible is true, that what you say about who I am and how you provide for my family and how you're going to show up for me in my time of need and be our provider and provide clarity. and everything that's in the Bible, all the words that are there for us to help us to not fear, to not worry, but to be able to move in faith for his purposes, having the expectation that those things will happen. I will have all my needs met, everything will be good, and now I will be able to truly embrace and maximize my purpose in this earth for God's purpose, right? As opposed to having a specific in mind. That's been very subtle. The second thing, as it relates to Selah and I, is that as she just described when we met, I was on the phone. I remember actually who I was on the phone with, actually. And I don't remember what we were talking about exactly, but it was business. And, I was already well down the path of being an independent entrepreneur. I had an office in Baltimore, et cetera. And I had come from the office to meet her for our first date that night. And what did not happen, where I fell short, and perhaps you could say we fell short, really, I think I own most of the blame, if not all of it, is that I never recalibrated the vision I believe God gave me for being an entrepreneur and a business person once we got married. So she was almost just along for the ride in a sense, and has been until very recently.
Yep.
And it's really been like a process from the last 4 years, 2019, I would say. And then again, probably again in 2020, 2021, we had to, revisit it again. But really in the last few, months and even few days and weeks, it's been a process of me understanding and her being able to speak truth to me and me being able to receive it and understand, process it, and us just talking it out, where I've had the realization that, you know what, we never sat down and said, all right, like, what does this look like for us? Because it's not just about Russell anymore, right? And so, she, believed and wanted to believe everything she saw on that first date that I told her was going to happen. And when it didn't happen over time, it obviously created stress. It created financial stress. It created stress in our marriage and our extended family dynamic at times in various ways. And so, don't get us wrong, we haven't gone broke and hungry in the world, but nonetheless, we're certainly not where we want to be in a number of ways financially, and I haven't certainly obtained the success that if you wind the clock back 10 years, that I thought I would have had. And so I've had to say, well, maybe part of that is because we haven't been united as to how I should go about creating wealth or earning an income, or what category you want to put it in. So I think that's been really the two big things. Again, one, us being together, and bringing the Holy Spirit, the three-strand cord, right? Not really being aligned. And then also just really understanding about expectation. And the expectation thing is really important because you're focusing, I think I focus more on the outcome, expecting God to move on the outcome, relatively speaking, that desire, as opposed to saying, focusing more on God and just knowing that God will make things well and right, whatever that might look like, and focusing more on God as I move forward on a consistent basis with a level of discipline. So I think those are important things that I'm still processing. I hope bring a different lens to your journey into the unknown, because certainly we continue to journey into a great unknown of our own. Thanks.
Yep. So, clarifying, the shifting is with letting go of the expectation of what the outcome will be or how it'll look. And the second one is doing it together with your wife. So as far as doing it together with God, was he in on it from the beginning, or was this something that you started and asked God to come alongside or help you with, or was it an idea that came from God? Or do you even know? Like sometimes it's like, I don't know where this idea came from.
This is where it gets interesting. When I formed my first company in 2007, I fasted and prayed before I did it. When I left my day job in 2010, I fasted for a month. I lost 15 pounds and prayed before I did it. I did not revisit those decisions in a similar fashion once we got married, and I should have. That's been the biggest revelation I've literally had in the last few days. If I really thought about it, it was that important. There's another person that's a part of this equation now that we should have fasted and prayed together to see clarity, maybe done it on a regular basis going forward over time to make sure that I was on the right track. So it's been, I don't question it in terms of what I've been able to gain and learn and understand, the relationships I've made and how I've grown. But certainly what I would, want others to not make the same mistake that I think I've made, that I believe we've made, in not revisiting what I felt God had called me to do. But it was no longer just me. It had to be the three of us, the Holy Spirit, my wife, and I, had to be united in that same belief and intention.
Got it. Thank you. Talk to me about, in this ecosystem framework of thought, is there a place where you believe God is asking you to trust Him like you never have had to do before? That may have fear come up a bit, or an intense uncomfortableness, maybe even anxiety.
Yes, all those things. So this is fresh. I just want you guys to know this is fresh and this is new and this is this year. So without like going too deep into my story, I've gone through like a really intense 5-year healing and growth that started with me going to rehab and getting sober. And I'm over 3 years sober. But the first part of our marriage, the first part of our marriage, popping out babies and, on the path of starting an alcoholic journey. And so I was just like existing in our marriage and supporting and championing what he was doing, but never really feeling that's what we were called to do. But I didn't feel like I had a leg to stand on, if I'm being honest, because I had my own set of issues that I didn't want him to bring up. So I wasn't going to bring up his. But then once like I got sober and I got healthy and I started to find my voice and heal from deep insecurities and people pleasing and codependency, I started finding my voice. And so beginning of this year, I started a freedom group at church, and it's been amazing for me. But during this time, from the beginning of this year, I've been praying, God, help me to tell Russell the hard things. Teach me what to say, because what I've been saying since we've been together hasn't worked. And this can't continue to be our story. I need to say the things that I've been holding back. And so I've been asking God to show me how to say those things. And so over the last couple months, we've been having some really intense, difficult conversation. I've had to say things I've never felt confident enough to say, but that he's needed to hear. And he has said things to me even today that I have been dying to hear our entire marriage. And like God is doing it. Like it's happening because I'm praying, God, soften my heart, give me the words to say, make me ready to accept whatever this journey is, even if it's another 10 years of this, mostly this and a little bit of this. And God is just doing so many amazing things in that. And we are in the middle of it. We are in the valley. We are in the struggle right now, but we are better than we have ever been. We are stronger than we've ever been. We are more unified. Like if I'm going to be broken in a cardboard box, I want to be with this man. Like I love him for a penny. I'm in this, I told him today, for a penny or for a pound. And right now we are in a penny, but I have so much joy and so much love for him. I don't want to be anywhere else than right here with our penny. So, I'm finding what I need, but this has been a tough road and a difficult process.
Wow. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would say, first of all, you were grooving, so we couldn't stop you. We can't just let the fact that you've been sober for 3 years just like skirt by. Like that's amazing. I don't know what that's like.
3 years, 3 months, and 8 days.
All right. So before we came to the DMV, we were in Ohio, and I was a creative pastor at a church. And when we got to Ohio, we were in New York, we went to Ohio, we stepped in right in like the middle of the fentanyl crisis in Dayton, where we were at Dayton, Ohio, was ground zero. And so our church was downtown in this. And so there was a lot of conversations about addiction and rehab, and I actually had the opportunity to teach a class, workshop, whatever you call it, where I taught people who were in rehab how to write a hip hop song in order to process heavy emotions or negative emotions, because I thought, well, I mean, we're seeing all this stuff happening around our community. The church was predominantly white, which was the population of the people most affected by this health crisis. And what I know about for me is music helped me to process so much raw emotion. So I said, maybe someone else will benefit. And so, I mean, there's a couple of the students, one student's cousin passed because of addiction. And then a couple of the other ones, one had been in jail. Another one lost her family. She now has it back. I think she's pregnant again. I think she may have a long-term partner. But I was really able to learn a lot more about addiction, learn more empathy, gain more empathy, and begin to understand it, like medically, spiritually. I mean, I'm sure I don't even understand it, even as much as it's, the lived experience. However, I now have a lot more empirical evidence experience about you saying 3 years. And so that we can't let that slide, because I also remember the things that God has taken from me. For me, it was abstinence. And so I remember being at the 1 year, 1 month place where it was impossible to have that happen. It was, you know what I mean? And I would talk to old friends and they would just be flabbergasted, like what happened to you, man? So, yes, congratulations.
Thank you. This feels impossible. I mean, it's obviously possible, but sometimes when we celebrated 1,000 days sober, I was just, it's unimaginable. I couldn't have imagined. But I will say I started, maybe we can have a whole nother conversation another day, but it is the best thing I ever did. But I started getting sober 5 years ago, and I'm over 3 years sober. So I didn't get it right away. And there's a importance to that in story, and that to not give up and, to continue to go after it. So yeah, maybe another time, but yes, thank you. I'm very excited. And I couldn't have done it without this guy. So he did an intervention, and he's the reason, he's the catalyst behind really pushing me and the driver behind it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Amen. If you don't mind, do you have any thoughts?
This is a beautiful story. I was just going to comment on how clear it is that you guys are huge supporters of each other and why you're thriving no matter what. You know what I mean? Regardless if it's a penny or a pound. Having each other's support, you could just hear it coming off of you guys.
And so when you talk about, I agree. Okay. That it was, what I'm saying is very encouraging to hear and to see. And I would love to hear you all explore, if you would be so generous, as to talk about the valley, the penny part. For someone who, because you talked about, if this is what God would have us to do and we're unified, we're gonna we're gonna roll with it. And then you talked about being in the valley, and then the penny part right now. If if you could, as much as you feel comfortable, kind of explore what that's like experientially for you all. Like for us, when we were saying we stepped into this at the worst possible time, it was like I had gotten fired and we were scrambling, trying to figure things out, and ended up like owing $18,000 in rent, and like we got a grant, and just like that, it was gone. And well, we started the podcast talking about like in the middle of that journey, and sharing it, not knowing what was going to happen. And we're not saying ask you to share anything like that, but just really would love to hear what that experience has been like, and how you've been walking through that with the Lord.
I think we just some days are challenging, but such is life. I think one of the things that we've learned in the last year and a half is really shifting our perspective around money. And you talked about comfort in the beginning of this podcast, right? And that's really what it's really about. It's about economic comfort, right? So do we put things, and do we put what allows us to purchase those things, money, as an idol before God, right? And is that where our strength is? Is that where our security comes from? And I think one thing that we've been able to grow in over the last year and a half is to be able to eliminate that idol. And some of the behaviors that were associated, and attitudes that were associated with it, and some of the immaturity we both had in certain areas that prevented us from growing, prevented us from moving forward in certain areas of our life, prevented us from moving forward in our relationship with God. So we really have done that work. We had to still work with the financial coach, and just been more diligent. Some of the real tactical fundamentals, but also about talking about money and really shifting the perspective of like, we're going to have a bills conversation to, we're going to have a stewardship conversation. How are we stewarding the resources that God has given us? What are they to be used for? And really thinking about it from that perspective. So I think that's been a big key part of our journey. But I think, beyond that also, I think in the midst of that, and of course, in these times of the last 3 years where, there's, I did have employment for a while, lost it in the pandemic, and there were layoffs. God has provided. Sometimes it's always been right on time. It's always been, there's been certain occasions where it's been really amazing how God has really responded to our need and to our discipline in our stewardship. And so it's not been, the challenge I think has been, and I don't want to speak for you, but has been having the level of security. And I think women usually want that. Men are supposed to be the provider and want that. So we've never gone without, but having the level of security has been a challenge, right? And so there's been growth there for both of us in understanding who God is when it comes to money, when it comes to provision, and then when it comes to our assignment, right? And not getting overwhelmed with fear and anxiety, but understanding that whether it's our job or our business or the people who we interact with in the world or in church, and that we're called to be in people's lives or speak to people, that if we let, what we may perceive as lack triple us and burden us to the point where we can't take action, well, we can't be generous. And that's the other thing we've done. We've consistently tithed since the beginning of 2022. And even when it's been hard, we've done it, and we've seen the fruit of that. And it's the most amazing thing, because it's so counterintuitive, but that's who the character of Christ is. That's the kingdom. So not only that, we've been able to be generous to our family. We've been able to be generous to friends who come out of nowhere, and we pray, and then sometimes we both had the same number in mind. And in the conversation, we're going to Venmo, cash, whatever it is, to help someone who needed help. And so that's been a blessing. So it's been like such a unique tension, right? Because in the process of that, like, my wife's gotten healthier, people have begun recognizing us, and I've gotten some wonderful like volunteer opportunities and be on boards and different things. And so like it's this interesting tension. It's like, okay, God, what are you up to, right? Like people recognize us, people seem to see God's favor on us, and we try to be able to be generous on every occasion. We've been diligent, but yet we still haven't quite gotten to the place where we really want to. So we're just being receptive, quite literally in these recent days around, okay, God, you're building something into us. It has not been pleasant necessarily, it has not been fun, but we feel it, and we're grateful for it, and we're growing. And so as I talked about the shift earlier about expectation, like, you know what? I let go of my expectation about my business or about my career or even where I am in volunteer spaces. Guys, know you're going to do something amazing. So let me just focus on what am I doing today? What am I doing this week? What am I doing in this moment? How am I doing it with you? And how can I execute faithfully and relentlessly to pursue God and what God's put in my hands to steward on all accounts. And so I think with that shift, it's just fascinating to kind of see God's a God of order, but God's not a God of our order, right? Of how we think things should unfold, of how we think it should play out, how the world thinks it might make sense. It's not necessarily that way. And so really, again, being on that adventure of the unknown and being at peace with it. Our Bible verse for the year is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And if you read the previous verses, it talks about, people coming against me. I'm in jail. Like things are bad. I've seen good. I've seen good. I've seen bad. But I can do all things. I can handle it when there's plentiful. I can handle it when there's lack. Right in the moment, I can do all things. And so I think sometimes people take that Bible verse out of context and forget the context of which it was written. To understand, I can do all things, which means I can worship God. I can thank God. I can focus on God when there's plenty. Everybody thinks I'm the best thing, and I can focus on when I don't have $1 and people are against me, and everything in between. And I think that's the discipline that God's been building into our marriage and into us in this season, and we're excited to see where it takes us.
Ooh.
He can preach.
Preach.
Right?
Preach, yes. I'm encouraged. And I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, I just want to hear more, and I want to ask to hear from them again before we have to end, so it's not like a rushed thing, but go ahead.
You talked about eliminating idols of comfort or expectations. And for those listening who may not be familiar with the terminology idols, it's just anything that we esteem or worship more than Jesus, something that eclipses our devotion, our love for him. And so can you talk about that process? Like, how did you identify them? If it's okay, maybe identify what they were, the frameworks around those idols, and how, I kind of asked this, but even how, you partner with God to eliminate them, and how did you, fill that new space, right, once they were gone?
So I guess I could answer this a little bit because we've talked a lot about idols. I had to realize over the last couple of years that obviously drinking was an idol of mine. I put my family as an idol before the Lord, and that was removed from me. And in that happening, I had to draw closer to the Lord. But more recently, around like finances and all of that, I didn't really truly believe that God was my provider until more recent. I did not trust that. I did not believe that. I would work for a 200-year-old Fortune 500 company that was my provider. And when that was shaky, then I would put stress on Russell that he was my provider. And it was wrong. And I had to realize that I was not trusting God. I was idling my employer or my husband or whatever business idea that we had. And I wasn't, really trusting that God was our provider. And I think that really became my idol. I had to refocus how I trusted God. And everything has changed. It's interesting. You asked earlier about the valley. I feel like because we've been so in the valley over the last couple of years specifically, that I've been more hungry for God, and I've wanted to go after him more. And I desire my morning devotions and my worship or my time alone with God, that it's like, maybe this is what needed to happen for me to get my life together. Like, it's all becoming so clear, and I'm just so thankful for it. But you go ahead. It's late. I'm losing my thought.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I think it's just been a process of being on the journey and us going after God and earnestly seeking to gain the wisdom and understanding we need to be more impactful, right? Of course, we want to have a better financial situation, but I think our heart really is to see kingdom come in many areas. Obviously, Selah's area is sobriety, and also is in addiction, and also in dentistry.
Yeah.
We both share a desire for a passion for young people, and people to be able to be trained and have economic opportunity, and we share a passion for that. And that's some of the work that I do in the volunteer space. And so we say, okay, God, how can we be more impactful? It's not about us having more stuff or even us having more friends, quote unquote, or more notoriety, but how can we be more known because of who you are and what you've done in our life? And then how can we also impart that wisdom to others and share it and make it available through Selah's podcast, through sharing with you guys. And so it's really what it's about. And as we've gone along the way, we've had to identify, okay, money's an idol. Okay, my business ambition might be an idol. Okay, alcohol was an idol. Okay, family and everything that they wanted and expected was an idol. And so the journey continues, right? And that's who God is. And as you said earlier, Antoine, about being bored, we're not bored. That's one thing we are not, is because God is growing us. God often is stretching us in the valley and preparing us in the valley because we've got to climb the next mountain. And as we climb and move up that mountain, we're going to get a new perspective as to who God is, and we're going to learn new skills and new things, and meet new people and have new experiences, and be able to have a different type of perspective, a different type of impact. And that's the life that we want to live. We don't want to be stagnant. We don't want to be stagnant in our faith or in our life. And I think that's certainly what has made me an entrepreneur. And the one thing that's not shared in Selah's bio is that she's actually had her own dental consulting firm and managed a $5 million dental practice.
I was an entrepreneur myself.
Right. So I've told her, I said, look, I've tried to do some deals and I've had a startup and done. I said, but I've never really directly managed a $5 million anything. So I need you to give me some of your wisdom, in certain situations, right? So we both, I think God brought us together. We're obviously different, but we're also very similar, and we have complementary skill sets. I think in this season, it's just a matter of us figuring out what does that look like as we've grown so much in these 8 years of marriage and almost 10 years of being together and knowing each other, et cetera. What is God really trying to do? What other idols do we need to remove so we can make space for more of the presence of God in our life to bring forward what he has for us and our purpose?
Yes, so much wisdom. I'm just very encouraged here. Were you gonna say something
I'm grateful.
else?
Well, I'm curious to what's encouraging, if you don't mind.
Your zeal and passion, although you're still in the middle, and like you said, these are conversations that you're just now having, like months ago, weeks ago, days ago, processes that you're still in, things that are unknown. You have a family, and so it's like a new thing that you're stepping into. So, but there's just still so much zeal and passion and like readiness, like let's go, So that's encouraging. I'll just share that.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there what?
I want you to be aware of the time is all.
Oh, I'm aware. These are two last questions. Just is that
I
okay?
won't be as long-winded, I promise.
No, you guys are great. You guys are fine.
Is that okay?
Okay.
If you want, if you
Go ahead.
think
Go
if you
ahead.
think we should forego them,
Go
that's
ahead.
fine. Okay.
I'm
Come
the
on, throw them
time
out.
police.
Go for
Come
it.
You're
on,
the
throw them out.
question police. Go ahead.
Just make it sound good when you edit this.
When you think about family structure, your family, and you living like this, experiencing a valley and trusting God with however it comes, and I'm not going to try to, you're not going to try to control the narrative or the outcomes. How do you, even if you deal with this, think about, process, walk through the surrounding, I guess you would say, solar systems of family and friends, and I don't know if there's questions or there's a lack of understanding of, we're doing this, trusting the Lord. We believe He's directing us in this path, and I would say, is there, and if there is, people who see it and are like, man, what are y'all doing? It would be so much easier if you did it this way. And you're like, well, we're anchoring ourselves in the Lord. And they're like, they don't say it like this, but it's like the heart position, like, it's time to put that away. Don't be, like the Lord, like, you really believe that, kind of saying, even people who follow Jesus are like that, can be like that. I've had those conversations. So I would love to hear, if it is relevant, how you think about those conversations, how you process those conversations. Because I know for me, sometimes, well, at the very beginning, it's like, I'm afraid to tell, my dad, like, we're planning to do this RV tour because of a perception that I believe he has had about where I'm going to be at, now 37 with a wife and two kids and what life is supposed to look like. And it's not that. And it has shattered those maybe dreams or expectations. And so that was a huge thing for me to get over and to work through with God. So I would love to hear if that has been your experience. If not, cool.
I think both of our families are different, but I'll say well Christian, but like in a different way. And we don't have purview into everybody's life in either of our families, right? But I think I would dare say that I don't know if anyone's going after God as hard as we are, or harder. I would say I won't speak to say it harder, but I don't think anyone's going after it as consistently, as diligently, or more consistently or more diligently than we are. And I think that's the reality of it. So I think increasingly, I think over the last year or so or two, there's been more of a recognition from both of our families of what God is doing in our marriage and in our family and in our lives. And we humbly receive that, and I don't think it's put extra pressure on us, but it certainly has changed some of the narratives that have existed for me and my family and for her and her family as to how people see us. And I think in different ways, I've spoken into her family or to her about her family, and she's gone, and it's had an impact. And then she's spoken to people in my family or spoken to me to encourage me to speak to my family, and it's had an impact. So it's like he had impact cross ways with each of our families, and it's been interesting at the time. And this is really just kind of coming to me now. The timing has been really kind of the same. At the same time, we've had challenges, but we've also had people say complimenting things, and people see, and people that actually want to come to church with us and are engaging, with what we're doing. And I say, you say, yeah, you got, one of my cousins was like, Selah and Russell, they're real Christians. I'm like, dang, well, I hope it's that, shots fired anybody else in our family that's not Christian. Like, I don't know, but thank you for seeing us that way. And so it's an honor. It's humbling for us. And so, but certainly wasn't always that way. But I think it's also, given us space to be more transparent and more vulnerable, even to speak in a space like this, where it's likely that a number of our family members will probably eventually hear this. family members have heard her podcast, and I think that's created space for us to be, hey, we're real. We're not, we're not trying to hide or act like, everything's always great, because it's not the reality. Like, God's doing something here, and we're very much living it out, and but we're open to sharing it, and we share it with love, and we want to, be able to shine that light into the people we love the most, which is our family, right? And so, but it's certainly been been interesting. I think for me, coming from the family, I come from a lot of high achievers in business, to people perhaps trying to understand, like, what I'm doing, what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm sure, and I've experienced that. But I think in this season, it's been a healthier conversation, and a better conversation. As I've been honest, like, hey, I'm trying to get clarity on what I'm trying to do myself, so don't feel bad asking or inquiring or wondering or offering to help, and that's been a blessing. So I think we've been in a better spot, and God certainly continued to move in that area of our life as we've gone forward recently.
Got it. And how do you reconcile? You talked about Selah. You said, even if we find ourselves in a cardboard box, like, you would still love him. How do you reconcile the possibility of that kind of, I guess, our society would call it failure, when trusting God the way that you are right now, right? Like, God forbid anything would happen like that, but what are your thoughts around that? That's something that we've had to reconcile. Is like, okay, the biggest fear point of stepping out, trusting God, is like, because I can't control the situation, and I know he can come through, right? There's many accounts of what he can do. If he doesn't do this, if it doesn't turn out the way we want to, and we end up in a situation that is, I guess, dire, desperate, not what we have wanted, we had to reconcile that. Okay, like, this is potentially a possibility. So, have you thought about that? How do you process that? If you have, I would love to hear.
So I'm both very realistic and also can be very spiritual. So the realistic in me is, Selah, you've been in dentistry 28 years. You're not going to be in a cardboard box. That we might be in a 1-bedroom apartment, but it ain't going to be a cardboard box. So there's that comfort, that tangible, real. Mm-hmm. I've worked this hard and I'm not going to be in a box. But could we be in a 1-bedroom apartment? Maybe we would, but and I think this is how a little bit I reconcile it, is that if I met Russell and in our first 5 years together, he made $10 million and then had a health issue and lost it all, we'd be in a 1-bedroom apartment. He wouldn't have all that money. Like, so I could have him a millionaire, I could have him unhealthy, but I'm still going to be there with him. It doesn't matter to me. And I think the spiritual, like, way that I kind of reconcile that is that God has always been faithful. He's always come through. It may not have been what I wanted. I was frustrated because I was saving money for a purse and then we had to pay the mortgage or something. And I'm, yes, can I take this on your podcast?
You can fit.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that as I've trusted the Lord more and we've been more faithful tithers, and another thing, Russell and I over the last couple of years have vowed to live an open-handed life. And this is how we live our life. If you got it, if we got it, it's yours. But in the same way that God's going to bless us, because we just live our hands like that continually, we have gotten so many glimpses of God's goodness, both financially and just with unimaginable experiences and invites and people and things that's like,
and love. Genuine love and
concern and care and like, just, it's like, how could I not see that God is in control? Even if it's not financial, he's blessing us in another way. He's giving us a glimpse of his goodness here with love, and then maybe a couple months later with finances. But this has just been our story. And there's so many things. And as you get to know Russell more, I'm not sure how deep y'all have gotten. It's going to blow your mind, because the things that God does in Russell's life and in our life collectively make zero sense. So it's just like, God is obviously in this for something. I'm going to learn what I need to learn through this season. And also, I want to just go back about what Russell was saying about our stewardship and financial. I was a big cause of that. I'm the main spender of our family. So I've had to do a lot of adapting and a lot of changing. And I think, if I'm being really honest, Russell hasn't succeeded in business because I wasn't ready. It wasn't just him, it's me too. And so, like, we've both had to grow, because guess what? If he became a millionaire or multimillionaire in our first couple of years of being married, I don't know where we'd be. And I'd probably still be drunk, let's be honest. So it's God needed, all of this is for a purpose. All of this is for a reason. And I used to think my testimony building days were my days I was out in the streets. These are my best testimony building days for married couples, for people that are going through this. This is it. We're still in these testimony building days.
It probably always will be. It is different seasons of life.
Some other way.
Especially as parents. Like you guys know that. Like, as soon as you figure out one season as a parent, they aged out of that one. It's a new challenge to figure out, and we're living that.
Yes.
So, yeah. I could say more, but I don't want to. I want to let that breathe.
No, thank you.
On that note, can I kind of start to close us out? I know Antoine has like a million questions.
First service in the morning.
Yeah, we're going to first service in the morning.
Yeah,
too.
and we got a luncheon we're going to. So
you're fine.
Is there anything else that we have not asked? It doesn't even have to be this topic, or it can be, but is there anything else that you want to say to the men, to the women, to the husband, to the wife, to the parents, to encourage them, to help them, to, anything?
All right, I got something. One thing that's really been beneficial for our marriage, and you can use this in any relationship, but it's worked really well for our marriage, is that we try to have hard conversations and schedule hard conversations, because as busy married folks that have kids, we learn that if we don't make that intentional time, somebody blows up, and that somebody's normally me. So it really does help. So we try to schedule a time that once a week. We don't do it once a week all the time, but we try to schedule a time that we sit down and we start with an affirmation for each other, and we affirm each other. We normally have a humble ask, which could be like, you left the toilet seat up when I fell in last night,
That
kind of. Didn't really happen, by the way, but
I was ready
humble
about
ask.
to Mom, I know, put the toilet seat down.
And then anything that we need to talk about. And I, in the past, have kept like a note in my phone of things that I might want to talk about. And I got to be honest, it really helps me be less petty, because by the time we had the hard conversation, I'm like, oh, you really gonna bring that up? Was that important? So that has really helped us. And we do, just within the last couple months, have started incorporating prayer and worship together, which is weird. I've never worshiped in my home, not like at a church. It was different for us, but we have really leaned into it, and we've had time of anointing each other, and it's just been really beautiful for our marriage, and it's opened the door for more transparency and more vulnerability. And I just think it's just been such a special time for us. It's really helped us love each other in a deeper, more intentional way.
And I think off of what she just said, I think one of the areas I've not always been good is being consistent about being intentional about leading our family spiritually. And I'm still, I think, working on that. I think I take some things for granted because we go to church and we're connected and we talk about our faith regularly with our kids, but we don't really go deep, at least for the two of us. And as our kids get older, incorporating them is something where I think I'm still building that muscle, quite frankly. I think the other thing I would say to men kind of goes back to a little bit of what I said earlier, and this has really been a revelation for the last, the last week or so, and that is, I think, coming into our marriage as an entrepreneur, having the heart to understand that there's certain things when you get married that you're gonna have to sacrifice and let die. And to have the capacity and the courage to really do the work to identify all of those things. Like, don't leave anything off the table that you have to sacrifice it. And in that way, we're reflecting how God, sacrificed, for us, right? And how, we're called, as particularly as men, to love our wives and to lead our families, and sacrificing what I feel God has said for me to do, or what God's placed in my heart. If it's not in line with what works for us, then it's not something that I can go forward or continue to do or live into, because ultimately it's going to be destructive, or certainly at least not fruitful for our marriage. And I think that's a lesson I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, certainly, but it's been a profound, I think, revelation to me. And it's not easy, but it will bear fruit in the long run, without a doubt.
Thank you.
We're good, man.
Thank you for allowing us to be your first guest.
I know. Thank you.
I'm a long time listener, first time guest.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your encouragement.
Yes. Thank you for your time. Just thank you.
Because Marisha has been like, well, at the beginning, sometimes now, but she's like, is anyone listening? No, it's tough just speaking into the void. And I'm like, well, Russell hit me up, said this. So it's been encouraging for Marisha, because I'm the one looking at, all the behind the scenes stuff, all the analytics, all the different things, right? So I get to see a more full picture than she does on a day-to-day.
True.
Let's say, whether someone discovers this in the present or far off in the future, I hope whoever finds this will be blessed by it, and hopefully in time we'll go back and watch or listen. It'll bless us, I'm sure. So.
Hey.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here tonight and sharing your journey, embracing your adventure with God, stepping into the great unknown, and hopefully we'll get to talk with you again another time.
I'm sure. Look forward to getting the families together and doing that soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. Peace.
Good night, you guys.
Bye, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yo, we totally forgot. We forgot, Marisha. We forgot to plug. We forgot to give you Russell and Selah's social media links, and so you can find Russell at Russell Fuggett on social media, Instagram specifically. And so it's RussellFuggett. If you're on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. If you didn't catch that on the audio version, just look in the show notes for Selah. Her social media handle is Selah Fuggett, and it's Selah underscore Fuggett on Instagram. So that's SELAH_FUGETT on IG. And then she has a podcast. She has an amazing podcast about, I'm going to read to you what it's all about from her notes here. It's called Progress Over Perfection. On Instagram, you can follow it at progress_over_perfection_pod. And the podcast is about her being raised in a white evangelical okay, I'm going to read to you her synopsis. Being raised in a white evangelical church taught me to project perfection even when my life was falling apart. I was focused on appearing to have it all together while struggling slightly and alone. Today, I'm a wife, mother, career woman, and in the best mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health of my life. This journey has been difficult, and the work continues. Come with me as I unpack the journey of my transition from false perfection to real progress. And she talks a lot about her journey with sobriety. They talk about being an interracial couple. She's white, Russell's black, and what that looks like, some of the things they need to confront as far as racism is concerned, how God plays into all that. It's a real cool podcast. Check it out. You'll love it. Thanks for the support. Check them out. Support them too, y'all. Peace.